There's a little bit of an editing error in the Sefer. We just repeat some of the text on the next page. We're on page 93, number 16, and it flows into the top of page 94, where some of the words have just been repeated. This is just an editing error. So we're talking about the fact that this is a mercha. This is something that's going to flow us forwards into what's going to come afterwards. So they are not looking, they're putting a separation between them and him. And the wound on Noach's genitals is exposed. It's moving forward. It's still open. Avihem, their father, with a tipcha. So this is going to close off the thought and have a slight pause afterwards. They saw in their father only his moral values and tried to preserve his merits as manifested by the closing shape of the direction reading mark. So despite the fact that he is now no longer able to have children, he is still viewed as their father. He is still viewed as somebody who can continue to give from here on in. So he maintains that, even though he is naked, in a position where he was naked, ashamed, and now no longer able to bear more children. Lo, not. So this is a mercha. This is going to move us forward into what's going to come afterwards. Proceeding with the reverence for Noach, they did not show any interest in any part or shape of his body as defined by the directional shape of the reading mark. So again, they're looking forward, they're not looking backwards. So this is going to tell us that they're really not focused on creating more shame for him. Ra'u, they saw, with the stabilizing sof pasuk, they saw in Noach only a father, a guide, an advisor, and a man of spirit with sound judgment. So we have the tipcha with a little pause with after avihem, and lo ra'u, them not seeing, as something that has a little bit of distance from that. So it's showing that the physical wound is not related to the way that they treat him afterwards. So it doesn't change their relationship with him at all. And that's probably something that could only be derived by this type of a translation that really focuses on the pauses that the notes imply. So the not seeing, in every other translation in the Parshat, you're saying, well, they didn't turn around and see the wound. They didn't turn around and see what had been done. But we're saying, no, they didn't see that on a forward-going basis, i.e. they continue to treat him with respect and as their father, and that is something that really only would be derived in a parish like this that allows that pause after Avihem to enforce Lo Ra'u has a completely separate life of its own, if you will.
It's also interesting, like if you contrast Vayar Cham from 922, which has the Revi'i on it. So when Cham saw his father, it was Riv'o. It was with this sexual lewd vision. And when Shem and Yafet looked at their father, they saw Ra'u, that he's an upstanding, strong, respectful guy.
Okay, so we're going to read through the sentence, and the things that I want you to notice are how Vayikach flows into shame, that there's really not a pause that's defined there, and the separation between Avihem and Lo Ra'u at the end of the sentence. Vayikach Shem Vayefet et hasimla, vayasimu al shechem shnehem, vayelchu achoranit, vayechasu et ervat avihem, ufnehem achoranit, ervat avihem lo ra'u. And we continue on with the next sentence, 924. We're on page 94.
This whole very violent, violent act coming out of their disgraceful behavior, his disgraceful behavior, is this not what the flood was about, to wipe all that out?
So
And then
certainly, certainly, the sin of the flood, or the sin that led to the flood, was people not respecting what belonged to other people. So acts of Hamas were acts of just not seeing a value in what somebody else had accumulated or done, and therefore not respecting it and taking it as your own, even though it was part of their effort. So that's and it doesn't matter how small it was. It was the disrespect from one person to another, from one being to another, that led to this. Ham, we defined his name as somebody who was hot-blooded or impulsive and would do things on a whim because they appealed to him at the moment, perhaps. And we decided that, despite the fact that this had great potential to be destructive, it was also a necessary element for people to maintain. And he again struggles with the fact that he's given this potential to be good and to be great, and he uses it in an inappropriate way. So it's not so much that that he didn't have the chance to act impulsively and have a conversation with his brothers or his father and say, listen, at this point we have to decide, is it appropriate at this point to have more children, to bring more roots into this world, or should we respect the fact that God has put a separation here between the previous generation and this generation, and therefore respect that boundary? So there was perhaps a way to introduce an element of what he wanted to introduce without being so violent. But because of his nature, he had a big challenge. He had to resist acting impulsively, and acting impulsively, as we defined the last sentence, with complete belief that he had done the right thing. He goes out and shamelessly tells everybody who he can see what he's done, with a complete air of thinking, I have done the right thing here. So we have to sort of look at it in that context, that there perhaps was a twisted reason that he followed that led him to this path. And he again was given this particular challenge of having to control his impulses, and he failed on his area of particular challenge. And the risk of wandering too much from the translation, maybe I'm going to focus on that point a little bit. This is something that was also taught to me, that we see all sorts of mitzvot, we see all sorts of commandments that seem to be irrelevant to us. Don't murder. The majority of us really don't have a strong desire to go out there and murder someone. And in fact, it's so strange to us that we're not sure that if we're put into the situation where we have proper motivation, that we're still even capable of doing it. And the question becomes, why is this still a commandment for us? And the answer is the commandments are given collectively. Commandments are given to us as a people because we know that there are different people within our society who are going to have different levels of challenge. And the merit that you are going to get for not murdering somebody is probably smaller than the merit of a gang member who's lived all his life with other gang members and normally sees murder around him. For him to resist doing it the one time that he doesn't need to do it is an awful moral struggle. I'm going to hurt this guy, I'm not going to murder him, is an awful moral struggle for this guy. So he gets great zchut because he gets great merit because that is his area of challenge.
Right.
That is his area that he needs to focus on, to work on. And the commandments give us a wide spectrum of things that provide a challenge to everyone, with a major amount of reward for you for facing your major struggle, and a minor amount of reward for you perhaps for overcoming your minor struggles, or for being placed in a situation where those minor struggles just aren't relevant to you. So perhaps that gives us a little more focus on why Ham had this moment where he was challenged with being so violent and his failure there, but nonetheless why that was his point of challenge.
But even came before that, before he led up to that, there was the homosexuality, and there was just quite a few items that that they were punished for.
And again, don't forget, these people grew up in that generation where that was the norm in society, and they had to deal with that.
So he brought it along with him after all.
Agreed. We will continue. We're on page 94, Bereshit Tet Kaf Beit, 9:22 of Genesis.
Kaf Beit or Kaf Dalet?
Kaf Dalet. What did I say? 24. Kaf Dalet. Vayiketz, and he awoke with a mercha. So this is lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving the story forward into what's going to go afterwards. The effect of the wine was gradually wearing off, and he awoke from the state of heavy intoxication, as indicated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So before he's slightly aware, but mostly he's going to be aware from this moment on. So lightly connected to what was going before, but mostly sweeping us forward into what's going to come afterwards, typical of a mercha. Noach with a tipcha. So this is going to be a closing note. It's going to focus us backwards and close the thought with a pause afterwards. Noach. Number 2, blamed himself because he had tampered with the control of his mind, which affected the soundness of judgment, as shown by the closing shape of the directional shape of the reading mark. So because this is going to close off the thought, we see that he's going to wake up again, and he's going to realize that, was he true to himself? Was he the best Noach that he could have been? So he's going to focus himself backwards on everything that he's done, and he's going to say, do I live up to who I'm supposed to be? Noach, somebody who, Zeh Yenachamenu, this is the one who's going to give us consolation. Was he really somebody who is going to provide an example for his generation if this is what he did when he was influenced by the wine? Mi Yeno. This is the etnachta, so this is a stabilizing influence in the middle of the sentence, from his wine. Number 3, he saw that the roots of his trouble had originated from his wine, which he had obtained through his association with the Satan, as stressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So we had seen that the idea was to have the ability to have something that would elevate the spirit, elevate the conversation, and make things to the point of being thankful even when you weren't in full control. That was Noach's aim with the wine. He was trying to aim for the highest, to still be loyal even when he was a little bit out of control. And this obviously again was his challenge in which he failed as well, but the wine in and of itself still had its potential to it, still had the potential to make the situation better. So the wine is in fact the stabilizing element with perhaps an ability to look up from it. Vayeda, this is a zakef gadol, so this is again that line of separation with the two dots after it. So it's going to separate us out from what's happened before and then have multiple elements to deal with. He discovered that he was betrayed by his partner, i.e. that he had dealt with the inclination to do evil in sort of a challenge fashion. So that's who his partner is referred to here. And he realized that his own son had accomplished what Satan had started, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So his intentions were separated out from the reality. So that's why we've got the line of separation there. And he had thought it might be good. It ended up being bad. It was between him and his son, not him and his inclination, the fight here. So again, we have multiple elements at play. Even though he thought there were only going to be two elements in the game here, there were actually more, and that's what allowed him to end up on the bottom of the two dots.
Going back to the wine serving two purposes, like it still has a potential good purpose. I guess in this case it did, because his son was going to had the plan to do it anyway, so it acted as like an anesthesia. I mean, that's the positive side. Otherwise, he would have had a lot more pain.
Or it allowed him to realize that, despite all of his hopes and dreams that he had put into his son, that his true character came out, and therefore he had the ability to act on it in perpetuity, to allow this act to shape the future, and not to allow Ham's unspoken deeds to get equal weight in the world from here to come. So it allowed him to know the truth that might otherwise have remained hidden from him. 8, along with, this is a tavir. So tavir is that sheltered dot within the mercha. So this is going to tell us that there is a sheltering element here. Along with heavy moral abuse, he also caused him irreparable physical damage, as suggested by the shape of the reading mark. So again, this is a note with two elements in it: the curving mercha with the dot within it. So we see that we're talking both about a moral situation and a physical situation, and the realization that he had uncovered something that he might not have uncovered before, i.e. Ham's true nature, at least allowed him to act going forward. So even though both things were in disrepair, both Noach's physical body and his spiritual position, because of what had happened, there is still some stability in knowing that he had the ability to correct things from here on in. So that's why we get the sheltering sense with the fact that both elements had been damaged. Asher asa, that he did. I'll explain to you why I pronounced it asa, not asa. Um, but we'll continue first to define the word as Perish does. This is a merchab, lightly tied to what has come before, but mostly sweeping the events forward into what's going to go afterwards. Number 6, by the harm that he did to his father, he destroyed the spiritual sex, sorso, of the physical life and the power of procreation as expressed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So he is shaping the way the future is going to be expressed by no longer allowing his father to truly remain somebody who has potential to create new life. This is lightly tied to the physical damage, but mostly moving us forward into Lo, number 7, with the tipcha, the closing note for him, number 7. In this way, the son repaid his father for caring for him and preserving his life during the flood, as specified by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. The bad deeds of Ham are what closes this event off. And again, Noach comes to the realization that he needs to act based on Ham's nature. There is a concept called nasog achor, pushed backwards. When you have a note on the first syllable of a word and it has to stay there, either because the word is very short, like the word lo, it's only one syllable, so the note has to be on that first syllable. The pronunciation would be difficult if you had the note on the word before that on the last syllable, so then you'd have 2 accented syllables in a row, and it becomes a little bit difficult to pronounce. So we have the concept that the note lo on that only syllable in that word is going to push the reading mark on the word before it back 1 syllable. So normally we would pronounce that word asa with the accent on the last syllable, but because of the fact that this is sung, not read, the accent is moved back 1 syllable in order to allow pronunciation of the notes. So it's asa lo, that he did for him. And we're talking about Ham's intentions and his acts matching his intentions. And in fact, Noach realizes that these were his intentions from the beginning. He's pushing the thought back to this is the way he was going to be anyways. And hence the Nasag Achor gives us that message as well. That Noach realizes that his acts were the acts that he had been planning for a longer period of time, or that this was part of his Ham's true nature, and it was not just from the end, from that last moment that he came to that conclusion. It was within him from before. So very interesting. Even the Nasag Achor is consistent with the message of the Perush. Beno with a mercha. So remember, we're separated out from the tipcha before. His son, number 8. Noach's pain was many times stronger and more bitter because the heavy wound was incurred by his son, as illustrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So this is slightly connected to the deeds from before because it's a mercha, but mostly it's focusing forward on the fact that he was his son, and how could he do this? Hakatan, the youngest one, number 9, with the Sof Pasuk. Not only was it his son alone, but even called for assistance from the youngest of his sons, who was more efficient than his father. I'm sorry, my German is not good. I'm not quite sure what Tuchtiger means, but my guess is, I don't know.
Tuftik is capable.
Oh, efficient or capable.
So again, this stabilizing element here is the fact that this would be sort of the one who, I guess, was the most sheltered of the children. So you would expect his acts to be the
More innocent?
the most innocent, and at least that lack of innocence was revealed by the act here. So Noach at least learns to know the truth from this point on. And we have a comment. And B, Noach rationalized that not only was this act performed by the youngest in age, but also by the smallest and lowest in character, morals, and conscience. See Rashi, and maybe let's bring out the Rashi here. If we could quickly. Sorry, one and all. Daled. Beno hakatan, hapasul, v'habazui. The one who was invalidated and teased, as this is according to Breshit Rabbah. This is the midrash that Rashi is that Rashi is quoting. Kamo hine katan netaticha bagoyim. Here I have put you as small amongst the nations. Bazui ba'adam, made fun of by the other people. And he's quoting the pasuk from Yirmiyahu here. So when he's saying hakatan, this is a sentence that relates the word katan to small, so physically small, to bazui, to the one who is abused or made fun of. So this is something that would speak to, again, lower character or lower respect for others. So he's introducing that element by saying not only is he the youngest, but he is the smallest, the least representative of what Noach is going to bring forward, and he is also morally the worst. He's katan, related to bazui, to the one who would be made fun of or be less desirable. So we're going to read through the sentence, and we're going to notice that, again, the pauses after the tipchas are perhaps the most notable thing that stands out to define this perush, that Noach waking up is going to be separated from the fact that wine had potential to be good or bad. So we have that separation there. And the realization is going to stand by itself with the Zakef Gadol. We're going to have the Nasog Achor, the fact that Noach is going to realize that this is Cham's intention from the beginning, not just an impulsive act that happened at the last minute. So therefore it gets pushed back onto his first syllable, his first intention. And Beno HaKatan is going to stand apart from the acts that he did to him. So again, this is Ham's nature, the way that he was, and that's going to stand apart from the rest of the events. Vayiketz Noach miyeno vayeda et asher asalo beno hakatan. And I think maybe we'll end here for the evening, or do we want to keep on going? How we're 10 after 9. How awake and aware is everybody? Everybody still good? Because we're We'll do one more sentence. We'll do one more pasuk. We are on page 95, Breshit Tet Kaf Hey, Genesis 9, number 25. I got the number right this time. Vayomer, and he said with the tipcha. This is going to focus us backwards on what has happened before and have a slight pause afterward. Noach was in severe pain as well as in a state of furious disappointment, and he said prophecy pertaining to the punishment of his youngest son as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So having considered all of the facts that this was an act that might have gone back to Ham's original nature, Noach is going to allow the tone of what he's going to say to match the events. And we see that he says it, but it doesn't say who he says it to, and therefore